we are going to be talking about the opioid trial from this morning. So hours before that trial was supposed to begin in Cleveland, a $235 million settlement was reached between 4 major drug companies and Cuyahoga and Summit counties. We're going to delve into all of that tonight at 6, but first I'm here with legal expert Mike O'Mara. We're going to be talking about this. If you guys have any questions and you want to ask an attorney, now is the time. Comment them in. I'll be reading off my phone to read some of the comments, and we're just going to be talking about a little bit about what happened and what you can expect to see tonight at 6. So first, you were in the courtroom this morning. Your reaction to the settlement?
Well, we got this word that there had been a settlement, and because we're all ready to go, ready for opening arguments. The big theater is going to start because we had some of the preeminent trial attorneys in the country here to argue their case. And then we get this hushed, excited word that there's a settlement. And we had anticipated last week, as of late as Friday, that there would be a huge, massive settlement, talking billions of dollars, because, as you know, there are 2,300 plus cases. And so we would hope that there would be a settlement with all of those being kind of pulled all together. And then we found out it is only 2 cases, the case of Cuyahoga County and Summit County. Those 2 indeed did settle, but we still have this huge unfolding. We know it's coming, it just hasn't happened yet.
Right, and so there's going to be $235 million in cash that we know of. We know that Cuyahoga is going to get roughly $145 million. Summit will get roughly $89 million. How do you put a dollar figure on this epidemic?
Well, and you can't, because it is just horrendous. The thousands of lives that have been lost, the heartache that's out there, the amount of money that's been spent on treatment, and all of the issues that counties and cities have faced, that number is huge. So from a legal standpoint, we were waiting to see what the evidence would show, because at trial they'd have to say, this is where we came up with those numbers. And they've done hundreds of depositions. There are thousands of pages of interrogatories that have been done with experts saying, how much did you spend? How many EMS runs did you have? So they have quantifiable that data. Right. We wanted to see that. But of course, if you're the pharmaceutical company, you know that number could go really high, because a jury could say, you know what, we take that number and we're going to add another number because it's so outrageous. So they could have done anything. So in this case, it was great, I think, and very wise for the pharmaceutical company to say, the companies, the big 3, to say, we'll pay that amount. Because, Rachel, there is no appeal from this.
Right.
Once they say we're going to pay it, in the next 10 days, they got to write checks to Cuyahoga and Summit counties, and that means the money comes in right away. Now, yes, I think, and a lot of experts thought, you actually settled a little bit low. You could have gotten more money.
Right.
But the what if? What if you didn't get more money? And if you did, they could appeal. And appeals add years. And from all the experts that I talked to and all of the medical people here in the county that said, we need some help now. We can't be waiting 5 years to get more treatment drugs and more treatment facilities. We need that stuff right now. And I think the counties heard that and said, yeah, you know what? We will settle and grab this 250, 235, whatever, now, and then tell them to give us a check. And of course, Teva, the Israeli manufacturer, is going to bring in treatment drugs over the next 5 years, 5 million every quarter. So that's still in the pipeline. So the number is there, it will go up. And as you know, we're not done yet.
Right, exactly. And talk about that a little bit. So this is only the beginning.
Right.
Because I think a lot of people are going to be confused when they see that $235 million and say, wait, weren't they talking billions at one point? This is just the tip of the iceberg.
Right, and they still are talking billions. But even for Cuyahoga and Summit County, phase 2 will be in now, as we found out, in January.
Right.
Because the retailers, Walmart, or Walgreens, CVS, Rite Aid, all the drug stores, the big chains, are going to be brought back in. We expect the settlement discussions to start next week, but they have to come back and go to trial next January unless they settle. So there's more money that could be gained, because they're not walking away from this. I mean, there will be some bills to pay, but we just don't know what those are yet. We need to find out what the next phase is. So this is, for our 2 counties, the first step, an important step. There's one more to come, and then we still have this huge global settlement because all of the state attorney generals that were part of this and have been in negotiations, they're all frustrated. They wanted, a big deal and get the cash, and we're talking billions of dollars, but that has now been pushed out.
So let's see, I see we got a couple questions here, so I want to just read some of these. Thomas Lawrence says 215 million is not enough. What is the worth of just one life? And that's a really good point, and I think that's something that a lot of people are going to bring up. Why did they settle at this? They probably could have gotten more. But something we talked about earlier, and you kind of touched on there, is that whole bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. They can use this cash right now.
And the unfortunate thing is, if I'm a parent who's lost a child to addiction, you owe me a lot. I mean, my anger and my grief would want some sort of justice, and that means what in dollars? Because if it, let's say a car crash, you hit my kid's car, you kill my child, you should pay. I will get that money. In this case, those parents don't get any cash. The county gets the cash and then says, you know what, we're going to try to do the most good with that money. And they've got a lot of projects already earmarked for the cash. You know about that list.
Right, that's correct. So these two counties already sent out their abatement strategies, basically outlining what they plan to do with this money. So again, we're going to get into all of that at 6, so I don't want to give too much away, but they've already talked about, some of that's going to go toward treatment, some's going to go toward diversion, some's going to go toward education. So they have plans for all this money, because something else that was brought up from other people was, how do you know this isn't going to be like the big tobacco settlement that a lot of people remember from years ago? Where did that money go? Right,
and one of the things that when we talked to the county executives today, they referenced the tobacco settlement, because the tobacco settlement, if you remember, the state of Ohio or the other states got this wad of cash, and when that pot of gold came in, it didn't really filter down to Cleveland or Akron. And this case, it preempts all of that, because yes, the state attorney general will still make that fight, but now this money comes right into Cuyahoga County, right into Summit County, and then goes right to the treatment facilities, to the EMS, to whoever needs it. And I'm impressed that they've already earmarked money specifically for all these different programs, including in Cuyahoga County, the drug court, which is a huge thing. One of the things we've done stories at Channel 3 in the years past, that the great good that happens when you get people set up in a specific program that have specific needs, and good things happen then. So I'm encouraged the fact that this money comes right in and gets used immediately. I'm discouraged by the fact that the big picture has not been really painted yet. We don't know what's going to happen with the global settlement. Right.
So overall, when you're hearing today about this settlement, this does not mean that all of the all of these opioid lawsuits that we've talked about have been settled. So this is very early on. As I mentioned earlier, this is just the tip of the iceberg, but it is a step in the right direction.
Huge.
And like you were saying, you left the courtroom feeling surprised, but you think it was a good move.
I do, for Cuyahoga and Summit County only. And I know they wanted to grab the cash and then put it to use, because as they've indicated, we can't wait another 3 to 5 years. We have people in need, and the need doesn't go down. It's going to continue to escalate year after year after year. There are going to be more people, because the opioid poisoning hasn't stopped. It continues. And so those numbers continue to percolate through the system. And so, yeah, grab the cash, but we're not done. One, let's find out what the drugstores are going to pay. And then we still have what the states are going to get, and we'll see what happens with that money.
Right. And something else you touched on there, and that reminds me of something we were talking about earlier. What happened during these negotiations? How did they come up with this figure? How did they come up with this amount of money? And you touched on it there, that you can't quite put a snapshot on exactly that, but you can look at previous charges and things along those lines. Touch on that a little bit.
And they've done, there's been 2 years of litigation work building up to this point. And so when I was talking to some of the experts, they said, they've had depositions that went on for hours and hours, where they wanted, the drug company said, prove to us, how much did you spend? How much did it cost you? What were the charges? How much were your manpower hours? What did you spend? So they have information, they have that data, and we're hoping in the trial that we would see all of that stuff. But now, of course, he goes back into the, kind of the negotiation status. So unfortunately, we didn't get that clarity, but we know the data is there, and they know it's there. Otherwise, they wouldn't have settled.
Right. Again, I want to remind you to write in some questions. We're here with 3 News' legal expert, Mike O'Mara. So if you have any questions that you want to ask an attorney, now would be the time. I'm going to see if anybody else commented here. Thomas says there's definitely more dirt that needs to be dredged up on this case. Again, we're not done yet.
Oh, no.
Aaron says, weird how it's the pharmaceutical companies are getting blamed. Let's see what else we have. Robert, all the help that town and city and states can get from these pharmaceutical companies is a help. I think that's another point that we talked about, because people were saying, well, are any of the victims' families going to see this money?
No.
No, but it's going back into programs that could help so there aren't more victims.
Right. The legacy is that others will get help, that others may be saved. And again, we've got prevention drugs as part of this pipeline settlement, so that yes, there will be drugs that they can hand out that will keep people from dying. So we need people in treatment. We need rehab facilities set up, halfway houses set up. We need court systems set up and expanded to handle this caseload. That's what this cash will help do. Will it do enough? Absolutely not. Will it help? Yes.
Right. I just want to touch on one more thing. Bob had said, rude that I'm interested more on my phone. I'm reading comments from my phone.
Sorry. You have to read those.
So that's the way that I'm seeing what you're writing, so I can know what questions to ask Mike. So I wanted to touch on that. So again, let's see what else we haven't covered yet. Oh, this is interesting. So something we talked on earlier was what happens now?
Oh.
What's the next step? So let's get into that a little bit.
So the next step here will be a lot of these attorneys are going to be coming back, and next week they sit down with Walgreens. They're going to call in CVS. They're going to call in anybody who is a big player in this and go, here's our data. Do you want to go to trial? Otherwise, we will see you in January and be ready to go to trial again in the same courtroom, in the same federal courthouse. So that is still going to play out. And then there is, behind the scenes, a huge negotiation going on, because we're still not anywhere near the billions of damages that will be coming up.
Right.
So that's part of that.
Okay.
One thing that hasn't come up today, and I'm waiting for this shoe to fall, and that is, what about criminal prosecutions? Because today we're just talking about civil. This is how much you're going to pay. Right. But remember when Wall Street, we had that disaster? Very few human beings ever went to prison for that. But in this case, we have people who died, thousands of them across the country, horrible tragedies. And I've got to believe that some federal prosecutor is going to say, we need, now that we've got the data, and we know that somebody kind of cheated on this, then why isn't some executive going to jail? So that shoe has not dropped yet. Right now, we're just talking about money, and that's important, but there's not, that's not the whole picture, I think. I think we need to explore that other part of it, but that's going to come in the next couple of months.
Right. So bottom line, the big takeaway for today, this was a big step, but this is just the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot more to go.
Yep.
And we're going to jump into all of this tonight at 6 o'clock. I'll have a report, and Andrew Horansky will have a report, so make sure you turn to WKYC at 6 o'clock for that. And otherwise, we're going to go back to Facebook now.